Welcome to the Anson's podcast. Today we are discussing all things insurance, and I'm joined by Peter Robinson from Prism Solutions. Have I got that right, Peter?
You have indeed, Martin, and thank you for getting it right.
Prism Solutions. Now, the other week we've sort of been digging into why people give their companies the name that they give them. So where do we get Prism Solutions from?
Because I wanted to word which began with PRY for Peter Robinson Insurance. And I asked my friends, and most of them came with things which aren't suitable for a podcast.
Rude, yes.
Rude words. So we went out for a meal one night with some friends, and they came up with the idea of Prism. I thought, what a brilliant idea, but Prism spelled correctly. It's got an S.
A prism is like it's a shape. It's like a pyramid, right? So that's where you got your logo from.
Exactly right. It's great for the logo purposes, and also because we're transparent in our earnings. We'll quite happily tell anybody what we earn. A lot of brokers just live on commission, and some of them can be quite big. You find some brokers can earn 30-40% commission off the premium. We don't. Our average is about 14%. But we're fully upfront. We can disclose our commission, and many occasions we'll actually use a fee instead of commissions. So you can see exactly.
Now, I should be getting into commissions here, but I'm more so. This is my perhaps lack of knowledge of geometry here. Is a prism like a? Is it like a clear?
It's a clear triangle, basically.
Clear triangle,
think Pink Floyd, the Pink Floyd album cover. You know, with the light coming through it and being refracted off in different directions.
That's
like
a prism.
Rainbow. That's a prism.
So have you got any light coming through your logo there? You haven't gone too much down.
Allow me to get a business card out. And that's our logo. It's got the sort of light on it.
So it's got those colours on it, and that's. Yeah, so are you a fan of Pink Floyd? Is that?
No, not at all. My music is more like mid-'80s, sort of like 80s and 90s sort of genre, that sort of thing like that. But I mean, it's our graphic designers over the years that have run with it, and it works well.
Yeah,
and
it looks nice.
These days with LGBT, etc., it means it's an inclusive symbol.
It is, and it's all that full sort of full range of colours. Right, insurance brokers.
Yeah, it's a sexy subject.
Well, it is, insofar as I guess it's one of those things that we all kind of need. It's an expenditure that both individuals and businesses have. On one level, it's not like going to buy a car, right? Where
a car you get something glossy and shiny and beautiful, and you can polish it, and you make your neighbours jealous. Nobody ever makes them jealous of an insurance policy, mate. Let's be honest.
Maybe apart from when you claim at the end of it, perhaps.
But it depends. Of course, then it depends how the claim process goes. But I'll come on to that in a minute.
Yeah.
When I left school when I was 16, my form tutor looked down his nose at me and just said, "Unnecessary evil, I suppose, Robinson." And that's what it is. Nobody wants to buy insurance. It's the wrong side of the balance sheet.
Yeah.
When you're buying it, it adds nothing. It just takes away some of your profit. We're on the expenditure side, not the profit side. So there's always a big reluctance about buying insurance. But then on the other hand, it is a necessary evil. Certain types of insurance are compulsory. Everyone knows motor insurance is compulsory.
Yeah.
If you employ people, you've got to have employer's liability. Again, that's the law.
Yeah.
Even if you call them cash in hand, they're still employees. And if there's certain sort of premises you operate from, which you've also got to have public liability.
Well, let's dive into that a little bit, because I think sometimes people don't know what the different types of insurances are and that they cover. So I bet you there's some misconceptions that I've got. So let's start with that then. Employers' liability insurance, right? You're correct. That's compulsory. That's the law of the land.
Health and Safety at Work Act 1969, the Employers' Liability Compulsory Insurance Act.
Everyone has to have it.
If you're a limited company with 2 or more directors, you've got to have it by law. If the people you don't have to have it, if you're a corner shop and you're not a limited company, it's a self-employed business, and you employ your wife and your kids, you don't have to have it then.
But then anyone outside of your family, a true employee, if you've got any employees, you need to have it.
Or the other factors, of course. I mean, my son's got a building company, and I had to convince him of this over the bar of the pub one night, because he has labour-only subcontractors working for him. So I said, "You need employers' liability insurance." "No, I don't, Dad. I haven't got any employees. They're subbies." I said, "If they get hurt at work, they're going to sue you. So therefore, you are responsible for their health and safety whilst at work. Therefore, you've got to insure yourself against injuries from them."
Yeah, because the whole thing about subcontractors in the building trade, and there's lots of case law, and a lot of the case law actually originally comes out of insurance cases about whether they are, servants, I think was the old language of it, but whether they are sort of employed in the broadest sense, so that they could claim under the policies. These days, it's much more simple than that. So the employer's insurance, liability insurance, in effect is covering you from everything that probably people would describe as a workplace accident.
Yes, absolutely. But of course, accident implies it's nobody's fault. Claims reliability being somebody's fault. So incident is probably a better word for it.
Well, yes. I mean, us lawyers have got the line, haven't we, from the early 2000s of where there's a blame, there's a claim.
Yes.
And that is...
You're a lovely bloke. Anson's a great firm, but my God, your industry hasn't messed up my industry over the years because you're too good at taking money off insurance companies, which is why premiums have gone up so much.
I mean, I think that what happened, actually, the story of the late 90s is that they introduced some reforms into the law. Which allowed for the first time, and as with everything in business and everything in life, came over from the United States of America, which was to allow lawyers to charge what are called success fees, conditional fee agreements, sometimes called no win, no fee. Yeah. Now, we haven't quite gone as crazy as America, and there are still rules on what are called contingent fees, but which is where you take a sort of slice of the damages.
So the more you win for the guy, the more bigger your fee.
Yes, and to the point whereby in America, where they also have pecuniary damages, so punishment damages.
Oh, they're nasty.
Well, a lot of that, you'll often see those guys who are running for president or senators or whatever in America. They've made all their money winning one big, Erin Brockovich-style liability case.
And it's scary because what people don't realise is if you're a manufacturer in the UK and you're exporting to the States, for example, your insurance policy has got to take into account the fact if that happens and you get sued for that, you could be on for millions of pounds damages.
Oh no, absolutely, and because of that, that's why the policies and travel insurance is more expensive if you want to go to the United States.
Well, we heard, I was at a conference a few months ago, and we've heard about the first £10 million medical insurance claim on a travel policy. What happened was a gentleman was on holiday in the States, fell into a coma. I think it was some sort of accident. From what I understand, it wasn't one of my claims directly, but he's on a coma and he's $20,000 a day to keep him on this machine to keep him alive. And they're expecting he's going to run the full course and use the whole £10 million of his policy up, at which point the insurance company says to turn the plugs off.
Oh my God! Well, that doesn't sound a positive situation for that chap.
There's a no-win situation. There's nobody winning on this.
So employers in liability insurance, in effect, and I take your point, is that it's to cover an accident in the workplace where somebody suffers typically a physical injury.
Yeah, it could be an illness, of course.
It could be an illness, and in those circumstances, whether they're an employee, a subcontractor, it's an injury in the workplace. The policy should cover that because I think you're quite right these days that if such an accident occurs, you almost certainly what will follow is a claim.
Absolutely. The problem is, of course, when you've got people who manufacture or manipulate situations to imply they've had an accident at work when they did it at home. We've got one at the moment in one of my clients over in Coles Hill where the employee, the director knows the employee did it at home, therefore nothing to do with the workplace, but he's going to work and fabricated the claim at work to get someone of his employer's insurance company.
But in those circumstances still, it's important to have the insurance policy in place and report it to your insurers.
Absolutely.
Because the reality of it is, even if that is your suspicion, it's the insurance company who's got the legal resources, the investigative resources to be able to fund the defence of that action.
Exactly right.
Part of which will be, part of which might be a private detective monitoring that employee's social media.
Exactly right, and that does happen. And people think, well, they're just spying on me. No, they're not. They're just making sure you're not making a false claim, which is going to increase the cost of insurance for everybody else out there.
Okay, let's move on to, because it's related to this. I've got a workplace accident, and I've got if I've got a pub that I'm running, and clearly my employer's liability insurance, it's everything. And I think that, rest assured, part of what you do when you opening any premises to the public, you do need to be carrying out risk assessments. Your place, especially when it's open to the public, needs to be safe.
Yep.
But the safety net below that is your public liability insurance.
We had a case involving a pub, again, a few years ago, and the client had a basement on their premises, and they had the basement all fenced off so nobody could go near it because they were doing some refurbishment work on it. This member of the public, he'd had 2 or 3 pints too many, wandered over to see what was going on down there and fell down the hole. Now, my client was a pub owner. He shouldn't have been looking down there, but his insurance company said, well, you should have made sure he couldn't possibly have fallen down there, so therefore you are liable, and the insurance policy paid out again.
I mean, that can be a frustration sometimes when insurers do, because they ultimately will take a pragmatic view
it is
themselves.
a pragmatic view. Whereas morally, the pub owner might have said he doesn't deserve a penny legally, and the insurance company should look at numbers at the end of the day.
Yeah.
If it's going to cost them £100,000 to defend the claim, but then get rid of it for £50,000, they'll pay the claim to get rid of it because it's saving them money.
Well, just trotting through then the types, you've already sort of foreshadowed this part, which is product liability insurance. Typically, I'll need this if I'm producing, I'm a manufacturer. Typically, does it get into buildings or
not so much buildings? But I mean, if you're supplying any product, again, take a public example. If you serve me a pint and there's something in it which shouldn't be there, and I get food poisoning, that would be a product liability claim. If you're manufacturing something and it proves to be defective, again, that could be an issue there.
So will people in the hospitality trade typically have product liability?
They should do as part of their normal insurance portfolio. They would normally expect you to have that, yes. But people who don't think they should have it, but often should, are people who import from outside the EU, because there's legislation which says if you import from outside the EU into the UK, you are by law deemed to be the manufacturer.
Right.
So if you're importing, door locks from out of Mongolia into the UK and then selling them in the UK, although you're just the retailer, because you're importing them directly out from outside the EU, you are deemed to be the manufacturer by law, and it should hold product liability.
There's lots of people doing this now, isn't there? The sort of the growth of Temu and DHgate and all of these. In effect, everyone's becoming an importer, aren't they?
They are, but they don't realise the legal implications.
If you're on selling that, you potentially...
Well, if there's a needle in your Temu garment, for example, and you stab somebody, but you've sold it from your house in Sutton Coldfield, but it's actually come from China, you'll be the person that people are legally allowed to sue,
because you're the first importer of the
exactly
good.
Right.
Buildings insurance. Now, there's a slight... Clearly, I think people are aware in their private life, we're going to focus on the business side of insurance today, I think, but in the private life, they'll be aware of building insurance and contents insurance. Building insurance, and if this applies to commercial mortgages just as it does to individual mortgages, your commercial mortgage provider will require you to have building insurance. What's that to cover you for?
It's basically, the reason why the building society or the bank want you to protect it is because they've lent you a shed load of money to buy the property. So they want to make sure that building is going to be here tomorrow. If it burns down, they want some way of getting their money back.
So it covers you from a fire, which I guess is the most likely to happen.
There's a list of what they call specified perils, which are things like fire, aircraft explosion, flood damage, escape of water, impact, so if somebody drives into your vehicle, aircraft injuries, earthquake, that sort of thing.
And they're the sort of subsidence is one of those ones that sits on the corner, right?
It is on the corner because for many years it was not included. But in the 1970s, yes, I've been doing the job that long, it started to become standard there, but with a bigger excess. But insurance companies are still cautious about subsidence in certain areas if they've got high subsidence risk in those areas because of the sort of soil it's built on or the way the building was constructed.
Yes, because there's still a sort of legal principle of buyer beware, and up to a point, I guess, if there was an earthquake that then causes subsidence, clearly that would typically be covered by your building insurance. If it was that the building was not correctly manufactured in the first place,
sinks into the ground, yes,
and it was and with the sort of growth of sort of house building, there are plenty of houses that are built in the wrong sort of place.
Yes.
There will typically, I suspect, be a bit of a bust up sometimes with the insurer, when claims are made as to whether or not it's something that's happened by an act of God. I know that is a term in insurance, but as opposed to where you should have done your due diligence properly when you bought the house.
There's going to be massive issues over the next few years with flooding. Because flooding, we all know, is getting worse. Climate change, whether you believe that or not, but it's happening. Certainly, there's a lot more water than there used to be lying around. Now, house builders are being told to build in areas where they were normally avoided, like the plague, because they're by rivers, for example.
Well, where do you live, Peter?
I live in Tamworth.
Tamworth. Well,
there's two rivers there, but
they haven't been building by them in Tamworth. But I'll tell you where they have been. Stafford, as you drive into Stafford in the winter months, and you're driving through there, and the water gets incredibly close to some of these houses, right?
Yeah, absolutely right. But there's a problem with that because the insurance companies have accepted this is going to be a big risk. So I think in 2009, an organisation called Flood Re was established, which basically covered insurance companies against flooding on older properties. But they said from 2009 onwards, we're not going to cover any new properties because developers shouldn't be building properties on floodplains. No. But now, of course, there's massive pressure from the government to build houses on floodplains because we need more houses, but they weren't insurable.
That was my own eyes over recent winters, really. And then here's a sort of, I don't know if we're on fifth or sixth type of insurance now. It's become more popular. Us lawyers have always needed it. Yeah. But it's professional indemnity insurance.
We need it by law as well, because if I give you advice and I get it wrong, you can sue me.
And that's the point, right? Is that often, particularly service providers, and this might even include builders, yes. If there's any kind of design element to what you're doing, or indeed there is the provision of advice. Mm-hmm. That won't be covered, if you built the house in the wrong place, often that, as we've just said, won't be covered by building insurance, but actually there could be somebody at fault there, from the architect to the builder, if the builders just develop them themselves at their own development. And that is where increasingly people are requiring their subcontractors, are they not, to get that PI insurance in place?
A couple of examples. Again, the joy of having done the job for so many years, you've
seen it all, right?
You see so many types of claims. We had a building design company. They designed housing estates for building companies. Yeah. This is going back in a few years ago now. And what happened? Somehow he knocked the keyboard when he was doing this and moved the whole estate half a degree. Now, that doesn't sound an awful lot until you suddenly realise that one of the houses didn't have enough room there and the footpaths were like 20 foot wide. So the building company didn't realise this until it's too late. So went back and tried to sue the architect for multi-millions of pounds. In the end, he was settled out of court. But it's just an example.
The architect would have had the PI insurance
we had
place.
PI cover for him, etc.
But I do think there is increasingly sometimes with PI insurance, it's something for people to ask their broker about. Mm-hmm. But I think that people sometimes don't quite realise that they what they could suffer a claim for could fall outside of what they're currently covered for, and they might need that PI insurance.
We just advise a locksmith on buying PI insurance. Yeah. Because if he comes to your property and you tell him, for example, that, right, Mr. Locksmith, I need these locks for my insurance company. And he looks at your door and he said, they're all fine, they tick the box. Yeah. But if he gets it wrong,
and there's a break in,
and your insurance company then don't pay because the locks are deficient. He's given his professional advice, so therefore you can sue him. So we said to the locksmith, you need this cover for that scenario.
And actually for PI, for other than this sort of established professions, it's relative. If you're a locksmith, adding PI to your policy is relatively inexpensive, right?
It is. I mean, for his whole portfolio of insurance, it employs liability, public liability, tools, goods in transit, professional indemnity, it was like £500. So it wasn't expensive.
Oh my God, which is amazing. When I think as a law firm, it's eye-watering.
Mate, and what I have to pay for PI insurance as well, because our professions, we people know we have to carry the cover, so therefore we're sitting ducks.
When it comes to having a broker, right, these days I'm very aware, at least in my individual life, that I can go online, buy an insurance policy, get a fluffy toy and free cinema tickets, right? Yeah. Not mentioning any company in particular.
Other companies out there, of course.
There are. They're not as good though, but there are lots of them out there. Why wouldn't? What's the advantage now? You're competing against these online providers. What's the advantage of me going to see a real live person like you and getting you to be my broker?
Okay. Let me give you another analogy. Imagine going to a restaurant, right? You go to Gordon Ramsay's restaurant, and you get a tailored menu there, which is fantastic. Okay. Opposite option number 2, you go to Gordon Ramsay's and he goes down Safeway with you and says, "Right, you choose the ingredients," and you don't know what goes into his award-winning meals. Nobody knows what's inside the insurance policy except brokers. We read insurance policies for a living, so we know what all 100 pages actually mean. Martin, you're an intelligent, articulate chap. Do you ever read your insurance policy?
No.
Well, exactly. And why should anybody else then? That's our job. Yeah. We read insurance policies and we draw to your attention, you've got to have these locks, you've got to do this fighting, you've got to have electrical search done, and then we will draw that to your attention and tell you, this is what you've got to have done to make sure you're compliant.
So you've got the sector expertise to know that a locksmith you would know that a locksmith actually a PI policy, a professional indemnity policy, is something that could well be in his interest to have. You alluded to something else there. Are these in place? Like, yes, one of them's 5 years old, one of them's never really been done, and one of them's 4 years old. And he said, okay, well, just to tell you, up to a point, and there's a caveat to this, but up to a point, there's no point in me getting this insurance policy for you if you haven't got that stuff out. Because if there is a fire, particularly if it's an electrical fire, which most fires are, you're not going to be covered because you'll effectively will be saying that you have got an up-to-date electrical certificate, and that's what a broker knows that, right? But perhaps your layperson just doesn't know that.
Why would you know that? If you're running a rugby club, you've got to serving drinks, you've got to managing the players when they come off the pitch. Why would anybody expect you to know the insides and outsides of an insurance policy? That's our job. Another example, a few years ago, a friend of mine, he moved his household insurance away from us and went online. And I was a bit disappointed about it, but he's an intelligent bloke. He's got his own business, so he got on with it. A year later, he asked me to have another look at it because he wanted a price comparison. So I looked at it and I said, John, tell me, have you got rid of all your shotguns? He said, no. I said,
or have you what, sorry?
Or your shotguns.
Oh, shotguns, right.
Have you got rid of all your watches? He said, no. I said, we haven't bothered insuring them for the last 12 months, mate, because he thought all insurance policies were the same. Yeah. But we covered he got half a dozen shotguns, he got £25,000-30,000 of watches, and he hadn't included them on the new policy, which is why it was cheaper the previous year, because he hadn't done like for like.
Well, jewellery and watches is something that you have to normally, and anything over a certain value,
exactly right.
You need to. They'll normally be separately listed in the policy.
Do you think you should get up-to-date valuations on them as well? Because gold prices have escalated massively over the last few years. So you might have got a valuation from 10 years ago, and you think that's sufficient. It's going to be nowhere near enough to suffice what you now currently got.
Thankfully, my watch is made from 99.8% synthetic material, so there's no chance of anyone wanting to steal any of my jewellery. Unfortunately,
and Rolexes now, you can't go into a Rolex shop and buy a new Rolex.
Are you a Rolex fan? Are you?
I'm a hell no. I haven't even got a watch on, and I've got skinny wrists, so I don't wear big watches,
big blingy watches.
But there's a lot of people out there who do.
No, it's become very. These things have become sort of very, very popular, haven't they?
Oh yeah, not in my house. Rest assured, I like a watch which tells me the time. I look at me phone.
That's what everyone does. Any burglars watching this, there's nothing to be, no jewellery to be stolen in Peter's. No. He is very well. I imagine you're very well insured there. I would like
to think so. My biggest issue, and again, burglars can know this because I never find the damn things. I own several thousand Marvel comics.
Oh, interesting.
That's my passion outside of work is Marvel, and I love the Marvel universe. Not DC. I'm not a Superman fan.
Okay.
But the Captain America, Spider-Man, that sort of element of it. And I've got several thousand comics of those, which are quite collectible. I've started to value them, but it's a time-consuming job. And I've got one I found so far worth £1,000, which is nice. So my wife's sort of saying, get rid of them. I'm saying, I can't get rid of them. It's my childhood. But they're all sitting somewhere very safe, all in individual plastic bags. But they do need valuing.
Are you sort of real fan of that? It was just before you were a child, I'm imagining, but that's sort of what I hear is the silver age of Marvel comics.
That's how I learned to read. Mum couldn't get me to learn to read, so one day I picked up a comic in the local newsagent. I think it was Captain Marvel it was Captain Marvel, issue number 25, and actually then started picking up and reading it. That's how I got into reading.
To lean into this, of course, Tony Stark and his Avengers organisation, he would need employers' liability insurance, whether you would say that Thor is an employee or he would need the employer's liability insurance, wouldn't he?
We would for some of his minions, etc. I'm not quite sure if Thor would, being a Norwegian god sort of thing, could be deemed to be classed as the employee of Tony Stark. So I think we're Thor in this room now.
Well, surely when they were working in the capacity as Avengers, that Thor would at that stage, when he's on an Avengers duty, would be an.
But was Tony Stark the employer of them, or was it just an association with no actual legal entity as the head?
Well, I think the entity. I think if I was being prudent and I was Tony Stark, I know that he's very independently wealthy and perhaps could self-insure, but I would imagine that having an employer's liability policy would be sensible for him.
It would be prudent, but I mean, again, I've never had cause, and this is one probably failing on my part. I've never insured anybody against superhero damage.
No.
I've also never insured against zombie apocalypse or alien abduction. Although apparently those covers do exist, but I've generally never sold one. So.
Well, if you'd got the Infinity Gauntlet, you definitely would want to get that separately listed on your policy, right?
If you had the Infinity Gauntlet, yes. But saying that, if you had that, would you really need to worry about insurance? Because you could just make the insurance broker or the insurance company disappear if they didn't pay your claim.
Well, as far as I can see, getting onto Avengers Endgame here, the only downside of that as a product of mass destruction was that there seemed to be no rhyme or reason about who sort of got Thanos when he did his flick.
His flick, and 50% of the population disappeared.
I mean, but you couldn't say who was which 50% was who.
But
right?
again, this is why I love the Marvel Universe, because that was a big question actually, in all honesty. Because looking at the world as it is in reality today, a lot of people would say the world is probably overpopulated. So therefore,
hang on, are you a Thanos stan? Are you?
No. Well, this is the point. Was Thanos wrong? But you get rid of there's more resources. Then there's only 50% of the population, more housing, more space for everybody. So was Thanos right? I mean, if you
I think this is called Malthusian. Malth is the philosopher that we're talking about here, and I mean, there is a school of thought, of course, that says with technology, AI, modern food production, that perhaps Thanos was wrong, and we can cope with a bigger world. And if anything, the issue for a lot of the Western world would be sort of declining birth rates and everything else like that. But that's for a different discussion, probably.
It is declining birth rates. That's a fact. But if you look at most Westernized countries, they are bursting at the seams at the moment, and more houses, as you said, are being built all over the place. This is a green and pleasant land. So do we have a brick and concrete land instead? I don't know.
It depends where you go, I would say. I think different parts of the country is still relatively, still a reasonable amount of grass, I would say, around there.
I would hope so, as long as it's not fake grass.
No, I'm not a fan of fake grass anyway. You definitely need product liability for that.
Oh, yes.
Now, here's my point then, actually, on this. This is something that we like to do. Give me your top 3 Marvel characters. I'm talking the comic books now rather than I've not really read the comics. I've watched all of the movies. And I've got to say, I've gone off the movies a little bit recently. I thought the one I went to see, Fantastic Four, on Saturday was quite good. But
good rate. I haven't seen it yet.
I'd recommend it. So give me your top 3 reverse order, number 3. So you've got to work out who number 1 is there. Quickly.
Okay, number 3, I would probably go for Daredevil.
Okay. Listen, he's a lawyer like myself, much like myself, although I've got pretty good eyesight.
Well, that's the point.
He's a blind lawyer.
I'm a blind as a bat. So as a kid sort of thing like that, I empathise with people who couldn't see like me.
Okay. What's his real life name is Matt Murdock, right?
Matt Murdock, correct. Yeah. And I always...
Why did you like him?
Because as a kid, because he wore glasses. I know they want to cover with the fact he was blind, but he wore glasses and he had super hearing. And when I was younger, before I went to too many rock concerts, I had pretty good hearing as well. So I sort of fancied myself as a bit of a daredevil.
Fair dues. Number 2 then.
Number 2, probably a character you won't have heard of, a Marvel character called Union Jack, which is a British superhero of the Second World War, and basically went into battles of things, basically just... in a leotard with a knife, etc. And I thought that was an incredible thing.
Was he sort of like a British equivalent of Captain America?
He was, but without superpowers. But he was that sort of genre.
Was he just... So he hadn't got any superpowers, he's just good at fighting, like Batman?
Basically, yes. And his arch enemy was a vampire, a German vampire, funnily enough.
Okay, what's the German vampire called?
Baron Blood, I think, from memory.
Okay. Well, actually, really, Baron Blood, his parents, there wasn't... If you call Baron Blood, your destiny there is probably... What can you do? You can either work in...
isn't he?
Yeah, he's either going to work in the sort of blood donation service or you're going to be a vampire, right? You haven't got many career options.
And going back, my first one is on a similar vein. My first one is a guy called Captain Britain, which is of the UK's version of Captain America. And he got his powers from Merlin, but he's based in the 20th century sort of thing. Brian Braddock is his name. And
they were about to... Wasn't there... They were about to introduce Captain Britain into the Marvel MCU, weren't they?
I think there's still talk of it happening. Whether Henry Cavill was lined to play him, whether it happens or not, I don't know. But I would love to see that.
Is that the one that they haven't done yet that you'd like to say?
I would love to see that. But of course, the wonderful thing about Marvel and DC, to be fair, they've had 70, 80 years of writing stories, so they've got some great stories they could use. It's not as if they've suddenly written the Twilight Saga and there's only 6 books and that's the end of it. I mean, they've got thousands and thousands of stories over the years which they could adapt and use from...
Why have they lost their way, though?
Greed, possibly. one of the 7 deadly sins, but you're trying to make too much to keep the punters happy, to bankroll it, etc. I also think the screenwriters and the CGI strikes back in Hollywood a few years ago messed it all up for them, because the people weren't writing the stuff fast enough and they weren't producing the CGI they need to make it work as well as they should have done. And I think they're slowly getting back on track again now. But the trouble is, if you make a bad one, it sticks around for a long time. But there's some great stories there, and I just love them all. As soon as one comes out, we're hopefully seeing Fantastic Four next week.
It reminded me a lot of, and I think this is deliberate, and you'll tell me that somebody said to me that there's an artist involved in this, but it reminded me a lot of the Jetsons in terms of what it looked like.
Well, probably. Again, but you look when they first wrote the Fantastic Four, it's going back to the 1960s. So it'd be that sort of era, the Jetsons are out there in comic form. The Fantastic Four aren't a new invention. They've been Marvel's first family since the 1960s.
Moving it back to insurance.
Oh, if you insist.
One of the more recent legal developments in insurance, and you'll have to tell me the year of the act, was it 2016?
The Insurance Act.
Which has, I think, made a real positive step forward. Because years ago, and to sort of not contradict, it's really important to get your ducks in a row when you take out insurance.
Absolutely.
But to give the example of my rugby club and the good advice I'd got from that person to get an electrical certificate and everything else. If I hadn't gone and got my electrical certificate and my rugby club flooded, it's next to a canal rather than a river, so it's probably unlikely. But if it flooded due to the Trent bursting its banks, the insurance company could void the policy based on the lack of the electrical certificate.
I had an example just like that many years ago. I had a client of mine in Warsaw Town Centre who they were smashed through the plate glass window to steal their photocopiers. The insurance company came out and said because the lock on the rear window wasn't to scratch, they weren't going to pay the claim. Now, in the end, we did get the claim paid. Again, advantage of a broker. That's what we do. We sit on the phone for hours until they give up, usually. But that's what's so wrong about my industry. The Insurance Act has levelled that now. So now,
in that example,
in rugby club example, if the fire was caused by dodgy electrics and you hadn't got a certificate, yes, you're not going to get paid if you actually got paperwork. But if it's a flooding, they can't use the absence of electrical certificate to throw the claim out.
Yeah, and it all sort of slightly comes back to these contracts being of utmost trust and whatever the Latin phrase is.
Utmost good faith, but it should work both ways. When you take out the insurance policy, tell the insurance company everything, warts and all, because believe me, they'll find it out when there's a claim. So you'd rather be upfront to tell them about CCJs, liquidation, bankruptcies, all those things. But likewise, the insurance company then, if you've told them all the truth, morally and legally, they've got to pay your claim. But they will try and find ways to get out of it because they're a business, sadly.
I think that, and also actually the issue is that the claims are being paid out by the underwriters ultimately, and they are sort of several steps. The people who are writing the cheque there's insurance on insurance, right? And even if it's being handled by whichever mainstream insurance company you've heard of, the people who are making the decisions sometimes are a lot long removed from that. But I think that's important insofar as another good reason to have hired and to use the services as a broker is precisely when there is a claim, both in terms of, and I know your instinct is always going to be to report or to bring that claim if you've got one, and therefore you can give advice on that. But equally to fight your corner with the insurer, if there is anything that's on the corner.
You would not believe how many, we've got a couple of people in our claims team in the office, and where they just spend hours on the phone to insurance companies on hold trying to get a claim sorted. Now, if you're trying to claim on your own behalf to, whoever, you might have bought a policy from yourself by just click and buy. Are you really going to spend hours of your life waiting to talk to somebody on the phone? No, because you've got a life to lead. But it's our job. We will spend those hours on the phone chasing it up to get things sorted out for you. I mean, at the moment, we've got a claim which one of the insurance companies just turned down. So I've made a formal complaint. I'm then going to ask for an ex gratia payment if they don't do that, because we do a lot of business with that insurance company. I said, come on, it's the guy. It's not his fault. You give him a break.
Well, I think that you've got a bargaining position, haven't you, as a broker, to say to your ex gratia Latin alert, which I always like to point out when somebody's going there. But it's a voluntary payment, and sometimes what happens in insurance is that, especially when you've got a broker, right, that the broker can say, look, I accept that you can get out of this claim on a technicality, whatever that technicality is, but I think that most people would expect you to pay out here, and also I've got 150, 500 different customers who've got your policy in place, and I've got to, if you're not going to pay out on this sort of claim, I'm going to have to take a view as to whether you're who I should be putting my clients with, right? So you've got a commercial bargaining position that one person on their own doing an internet service just isn't going to have, right?
You obviously in my office literally yesterday, that was exactly the conversation I had with that particular insurance company. Saying, guys, not being funny about this, but if the answer's still going to be no at the end of this, I do £250,000 business with you every year, and I can guarantee you I won't be doing it with you next year because I'm putting with an insurance company who do pay claims.
I think that that's invaluable. It's the part of the service, of course, it's the added value part of your service, right? You don't get paid, you don't get any more money if you run a claims department because your clients expect you to help them with the claims.
Exactly right. It's not just a question of you come to me on day one, I insure you day two, and then day 365 we do the whole process again. All the way through that year, your business is changing, your business might need advice. Pick up the phone to me. Your business makes a claim. Pick up the phone to me. Let's get it sorted. That's what we're here for. We're a service industry.
And in terms of that, earlier on you mentioned about transparency in charging. Go on. So how do you charge your customers?
Traditionally, insurance brokers take a percentage of the slice of the action.
Yeah.
And
so when you say the action, what do you mean?
Well, okay, you pay a premium of £1,000, for example, to your broker. And there'll be 12% on top of that, which is insurance premium tax, which incidentally was brought in by the John Major government at 2.5% back in the day. And that intention was purely going to go towards flood defences. Now it's 12%. It just goes into the Treasury's pocket. So 12% of what you pay goes directly to HMRC. But disregarding the 12%, so you pay £1,000 to your broker could take anything between 5% of that or 35% of that as their fee for handling your insurances. Now your broker has got to disclose that to you if you ask him what it is, but isn't obliged to volunteer the information to you. Now, what we do as a broker, there's certain policies we're uncomfortable taking too much money on because the insurance company just say you can have 35% on that. We're saying, nah, we can't, that's not right. No. So we would rebate the 35% to the client and then charge them a separate standalone fee and say, Martin, well, I've done this work for you, my fee's £1,000 and that's it. And that fee will then cover all the work I do for you for the next 12 months.
Yeah, and
we use time, in your industry, of course, your profession, you use time recording software, so you can see every and we use the same as well. We're quite rare. There's not many brokers who do this, but we can record every 5 minutes of every working day for every single client.
You use 5 minutes rather than 6. We sort of tend to break the hour into 6 minute units.
We're simple fellows, Martin, in our job. With 5 minutes we can work on that.
Fair dues. I guess there is. That means there's 12 5-minute units in an hour then.
Yeah, and of course the cost is linked to the employment cost of that person. So different people in my office are on different salaries, as in yours. And of course, obviously, then if you're dealing with somebody like myself, who's one of the more experienced people, our charge out rate will be more expensive than one of the junior members of staff. But again, that's just transparent. We're just honest with people about that.
Looking at the insurance brokerage industry, what are the sort of major changes that are coming in your profession?
The big one the last few years, of course, has been technology coming in. My father was an insurance broker. That's how I got in this wonderful industry. Yeah. And everything was done by hand. He had paper, he had manual typewriters. Staff literally he would dictate letters to staff and they'd type it up and he'd sign them and send it out. Now we have very little paper post. We have very few checks. Everything's done electronically, email, back payments, etc. Our computer system, our back office computer system, is the heart of the company. The other thing which is happening in my sector is private equity. There's a massive amount of private equity coming into my sector, and a lot of good brokers have been sold or merged out because their principals have reached a certain age and think, stuff this for a game of soldiers, I want to get out, and they're being offered a big shed load of money by multinational companies to buy their business.
You are determined not to go down that route and just remain independent.
I'm independent. We're in the top 250 brokers in the UK now and it's not because we've grown massively, it's because our video product has been sold out. But we are staunchly independent because when you become a very big company, let's be honest, very big companies, accountants run a lot of very big companies, so they're more interested in not what's right for the client, but they're interested in what's right for themselves as the business. So they will do deals with the AXAs, the Avivas, the Alliances, just to pick 3 A-letter insurance companies, which might involve giving shed loads of business to them in terms of a bigger slice of the action, a bigger commission rate. Now, we're a small broker. We turn over about £7 million a year, but we can choose the right product for that client. And we can say, okay, we think you ought to go with that one. not because he pays us a big wage of money on commission, because we think it's the right policy for you.
Because you're closer to your customers and your clients.
Right. Exactly right. I've got clients who say my dad was a broker. My dad had clients going back. I was born in 65. There's one company I'm thinking of. My dad started insuring them in 63. I still insure them today. They're one of the third generation directors, and they've got a great business in mutually. And I look after them, and they have claims, and their claims are sorted out. I know them inside and out.
And presumably, that succession piece will be important for you, in due course yourself.
Not necessarily. I've got.
Oh, hang on! This is going to be hypocritical if you're now going to say I'm now going to sell out to private equity.
No.
I'm
not selling out.
I'm not. Don't get me wrong. I'm not trying to get your future succession plans here down.
I mean, I've got children. Yeah. I deliberately encourage my children to take a job outside of insurance.
Of course.
Because my dad made me come into insurance. He literally held me by the throat that day, held me against the wall, and said, "Join the family firm."
I'm negotiating for your management team when the MBO comes in due course.
Well, that is an option, and we've got employee ownership as well. That's another option.
Yes,
but I'm 60 this year, so
it's time to think about some of these.
It's time to think about it. I had some succession plans. They recently got changed for circumstances beyond my control. So now I've told my staff I'm committed. We're not selling out. We're going to keep this baby running. It's a good place to be. I've got good people, and they deserve. And
a good set of principles. It sounds to me like. I mean, I think that comes across right. That you got to. The basis upon which you've explained well today, principles that you work on, and plan is for that to continue.
If it's not right, Martin, we don't do it, and it's not right for the client. That's what matters to us. You've got to get it right for the client. And as I've got clients I've been dealing with since the 1960s. They wouldn't keep contact me for their insurances if I didn't look after them.
No, I mean, I'd like to think that that's what we're doing in our business too, and I think for all service businesses, which we both are, that is important, and it's where you can sort of make a real difference, right?
Because you can win it on price, but you keep it on service, or you can lose it on service, of course. Because you can be the cheapest person on the planet, you can be the cheapest lawyer on the planet, but sometimes you get what you pay for.
No, I think that's true, and as a I think that's true, generally, right? Tony Stark's not going to sell out to private equity, is he? Of course, he's dead, isn't he? Well, in the MCU, he's dead. Is he alive in the comics still?
Yes, he is, but don't forget, we go quantum if you're not careful here. There's the multiverse theory out there, and because there's a Tony Stark in the multiverse, which is still alive and well.
This is where I think it's gone wrong. But this is a discussion we're going to continue off air, a nerdy discussion for off air. Peter, thank you very much for joining me today.
Martin, thank you very much. I thoroughly enjoyed it.
It was really enjoyable. Thank you. Cheers.